Hi there. My name is Zach Johnson, and I'm instructor here at Garnish, the Garnish Music Production School. Today, I'm going to be giving you an introduction to Ableton Live and giving you an overview of Ableton Live. Uh, this is actually a way for students or anyone who's curious about what we do here at Garnish Music Production School. And if you're interested in signing up for a course or looking into any of the available courses that we have here at Garnish, this is kind of a way to give you a sneak peek or more of a preview of what to expect in a Garnish course. So what we like to do, because this is actually streaming live across multiple platforms, I want you to be able to ask questions. So if you turn your attention to the actual Garnish Music Production School YouTube channel, as you can see here. If you're not already subscribed to us, it's a great way to stay updated or currently updated with what we're offering at Garnish, and for future videos as we do these live streams, which happen every single day. But if you just type in Garnish Music Production School, or if you just type in Garnish Music, you can find our YouTube channel there. And if you have any questions for me as I talk about the overview of Ableton, you can go ahead and submit your questions today, right now. And I'll try my best to get to all of the questions the best I can and answer them the best of my abilities. And you can find, towards the end of this course, or sorry, towards the end of this segment of this class, I will be definitely taking your questions and answering them best I can, and then also giving you a little bit more information about what we offer here at Garnish. So stick around, at least if you can, to the end. And for those of you who are brand new to Ableton, this is going to be great for you. For those of you who might have been using Ableton for a little while, or maybe for a long time, this also might be just a good chance to review some of the basic principles behind Ableton Live. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into this. So if you turn your attention here, what you're looking at right now currently is Ableton Live. So if you haven't downloaded Ableton Live yet, please definitely do that if you can. You can always go to ableton.com to learn more about the different options or different packages that come with the actual live software. So what I like to do, how I like to start this course, primarily I like to go over what's happening here under the hood, things that are important to know about Ableton Live, some basic things here, like for example, about Live. This will actually tell you the current version that you are working on, and this will tell me the version that I'm using, and it'll give a list of the authors as well. So under this area here, let me go ahead and click out of this. I go back to preferences, and this is actually a really important area for you to understand. Just some things I would like to point out here that are good to know when you're first starting out in Ableton. And the first tab in the preferences is look and feel. So in here you'll find the language. Here you'll find zoom display. So if you want to change the actual display of your zooming in and out, this is a great this is where you would turn your attention to on that. Assigning track colors, clip colors, you can actually have it automatically or randomly select colors for you. This is where you can find the theme. So if you actually wanted to change the actual colorway of the template in Ableton, you can do that here. Brightness, color intensity, and color hue as well. Under here, this is a very important tab. This is the audio tab. This is where you're going to find your driver type, regardless if you're on a PC or Macintosh computer. This is where you're going to find your core audio, your audio input devices, and audio output devices. So if any of you are working with a sound interface, this is where you'd want to turn your attention to if you plan on using, say, a microphone, or if you're going to record or track instruments. This drop down menu here, if you actually have an interface connected, this is where you would find that information. You can see here I have multiple choices. This is referring to the built-in output of my Macintosh computer. Down here I have my Universal Audio Thunderbolt interface. Depending on the make and model of your unit, this is where you would find that information. Okay. Sample rate, this is where you can find that information. Buffer size for if you are working with any sort of latency issues, this is where you can actually adjust your buffer size, and you can actually do a test tone if you want to see how your CPU audio engine is performing, or with your interface. Under here, the link and MIDI tab, this is where you would find your control surfaces. So if you're going to use a external MIDI device, hardware device, this is where you would find that information. And as you can see here under the control surface, there's a list of all these different makes and models of different MIDI controllers to hardware, hardware 16 pads, like something maybe like Native Instruments Machine, the Akai series, and in this case you can see mine says complete control because I'm using Native Instruments complete control A series keyboard. Okay, moving on here, file folder, this is an important area. So if you wanted to save a template, custom template, over time you might want to start building up your own templates, depending on if you're tracking vocals or if you're just making drum beats. You can actually save multiple different types of templates, and right here is where you do that. Okay. You can also find your cache area here, and information about the Max application itself. Under here in the library, this is an important area for any of you who own the Ableton Suite package or even the standard package. When you download all the packs, this is actually going to tell you exactly where the installation folder packs is located. And if you'd like to customize this, meaning if you want your third-party sample packs stored on an external hard drive, in this case that's what I did, you could simply click where it says installation folder for packs, browse, and you can relocate your packs that you've downloaded from Ableton's website, or when you purchase the full suite, you can have these organized in a separate custom folder. Okay. Moving on from the library tab, plugins. Okay, this is an important area. So if you plan on using any sort of third-party VST or plugin, third-party meaning that's not native to Ableton Live, this is an important area. If you want those plugins to show up in your browser tab, for those of you who are on Macintosh, you might want to check out selecting audio units if you want them to show up. VST2 plugin system folder for both Windows and Macintosh, and then VST3 plugin system folder, you would want these on. If for some reason you've downloaded a new third-party instrument and it's not showing up in your plugins browser section, which I'm going to be demonstrating here in a moment, you could also set to rescan plugins. So Ableton will then read through all of your available plugins, and sometimes this is a way to make sure that they will show up and display properly in the category section under plugins. Okay, moving on, record, warp, launch. This area, this is where you can find the recording type if you want to select either a WAV or an AIFF, uncompressed lossless file type. Your bit depth settings are here. Count in settings, this is for if you plan on recording and you want a count of say 1 bar before the recording actually starts. This is where you would find these settings, and actually there's another place you could do this that I'll show you a little bit later, but personally I like to set it to 1 bar, especially if I'm working with vocalists. Get a nice count of 1, 2, 3, 4 and begin. It's actually a really nice feature. Okay. Down here, loop, warp, short samples. This is where if you plan on having Ableton assist you in warping and quantizing and actually detecting the BPM value of your samples, you would probably want to take advantage of this technology that Ableton's implemented. And then down here where it says auto warp long samples, I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Below that, default warp mode. Now by default it's set to beats mode. You can leave it in beats mode, that's completely fine, but I recommend putting it in complex mode. Complex is a different type of algorithm that can Ableton will essentially, the live software will, it's a little bit more not to use the term complex, but the algorithm is actually a little bit more high quality when it comes to detecting more complex audio waveforms. By complex audio waveforms, what do I mean? I'm talking about anything that has maybe more than one layer of sound. So maybe not necessarily just a drum loop, but if that drum loop has a bass line underneath it, or if it has harmony like chords, melody, vocals, this is definitely something I recommend that you have your default warp mode set to. You can always switch it back to these different warp modes. I'll be talking about this later on as we look a little bit more in depth into audio. Okay, create phages on clips edges. Okay, so this by default can create fades on your clip edges. I recommend that you turn that off because there might be some situations where you don't want a fade on a certain element. For example, like drums, maybe I don't want fade on my kick drum or my snare. That's something that you might want to consider or reconsider if you are if you are trying to have your drums smack or try to hit hard. Okay, down here again, this is an important area, the license and maintenance. I recommend get automatic updates, have that turned on, so anytime you restart Ableton or when you first turn it back on, as long as you have an internet connection, you'll Ableton will automatically give you those updates in the background. And send usage data, I recommend that you leave that on as well. It actually helps Ableton engineers, especially if there's any bug reports or information that they can learn from, depending on what kind of computer you're using or what software you're using, along with Ableton, like third-party things. It's actually very beneficial for the engineers at Ableton. So I recommend leaving that on. It helps everybody in the end. So yeah. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of the Ableton preferences. You might want to note that, of course, I didn't go into the nitty-gritty of every single detail. If you were to actually take the Ableton course, which is definitely a live course that we host, it's definitely more interactive, and we definitely go through every single aspect to this. But because this is a 1 hour live presentation, there's only so much I can cover in 1 hour. And if you're curious about our classes, again, they range between 3 hours to 6 hour courses, with, of course, with breaks in between some of those segments. But anyways, let's keep moving on here. So after live, in the file section, this is where you can create new sets. You can open up old sets. If you need to install packs, if you need to save your sets, or if you want to export your video and audio. So once you actually make a song, if you want to export something, this is where you're going to find that information under file. And then this is an important area, manage files. Okay, if you look over here, managing the current set or managing the project, sometimes you actually need to get inside the user library, especially if files come up missing in your project, which I'll tell you that's something you definitely want to avoid, and I'll give you examples of that a little bit later. But yeah, the managing files section is a good place to see exactly where your current files are stored and where your temp files might be stored as well. Okay, the edit section, the create section, the view section, all of these things here we're going to dive into a little bit more when we look at the layout. But everything that you find here when it comes to editing audio, duplicating audio, manipulating, modulating audio, things like that in that nature, all lie under here with edit and create and view. Under options, again, there's some good things in here when it comes to if you want to edit your MIDI mapping, or edit your key mapping, or edit your MIDI keyboard, if you want to actually use your keyboard as a MIDI device. Under here, delay compensation, reduce latency when monitoring. These are good tools if you run into any sort of latency issues. And then finally, the help section. Yes, you can actually read the live manual. So once you actually download the full suite, you could click right on read the live manual, and the live manual will pop up on your screen. So what's better than fielding your questions to the live manual? So if you ever have issues or if you have questions about something, you could always refer to that. And then right here, you can visit the Ableton website. You can look at your user account and licenses, and you can also check for updates just in case maybe you forgot to check off the check updates. You can always refer to it here as well. Okay. All right. So moving on here. Now let's take a look at Ableton Live itself. Okay. So up here, right up here, this is a very important area. Okay. In these global settings up here, this is where you're going to find important information like link. Okay. Link is an actual really recent technology with Ableton where you can actually sync up an external device. You can host two Ableton sessions together. It's actually a really cool, neat feature, especially if you plan on collaborating and you want to maybe do a performance live on stage. You can actually sync each other's tempos, which I think is a really, really cool feature. Moving on, this tap function here, I can actually tap out my tempo. So let's say a friend of mine is playing guitar in the background and he's not sure what tempo he's playing to or she's playing to. I can go ahead and just tap out the tempo. So let me just give you a demonstration. Okay, for whatever reason, I'm feeling 111 beats per minute. And you can see here, it doesn't round it to a whole number. If I want, I could just double click and reset it back to its initial default position, which is 120 beats per minute. But I could also type in 111 on my keyboard, hit enter, and now it's set to 111 beats per minute. Over here, this is a phase nudge down, and this is what's called a phase nudge up. This is actually a way to temporarily increase the song tempo to synchronize to external music. So this is actually a great feature for any of you who are interested in DJing with Ableton. Maybe you're working with a friend who is on vinyl turntables and you want to maybe sync your tracks up. You could use this temporary nudge function to create mixes together live on stage, and it's a fun way to actually hear your music kind of slow down and speed up in real time as well. Over here we have the available time signature, which you can change. Maybe if I wanted to set this to 3/4 or 6/8, you could do that with the available time signature. Right now it's currently set to 4/4. And then next to that we have our metronome, our click track. Okay, so as soon as I click on it, it will start. I can also hit spacebar to stop it. And inside here, you have a bunch of different preferences. Like earlier, I mentioned the count in 1 bar. You can change the sounds here. You have a rhythmic section. You can change in rhythmic divisions, and you can also enable while recording as well. Next to that, 1 bar. Okay, this is definitely more for, or this is the quantization menu for global launching. If I want to launch the clips, and I'll be, like I said, I'll be giving demonstrations of this a little bit later. So if any of this is confusing to you so far, don't worry, especially if you're brand new to this, when it was confusing to me at first as well. But as we move forward, I'll be giving demonstrations to exactly what these things can do here. And yeah, so anyways, moving on. Over here we have the follow action. If activated, the display will scroll during playback to keep the current song position visible. Okay, over here, this is the arrangement position, showing us exactly where we are in the arrangement. Okay, in a moment here, I'll be explaining the differences between the session view and the arrangement view, so that will make more sense, I promise. Over here, this is our play head, this is our play button. So if you want to actually play something, this is where you would play it. And then right here, this is the stop button, click stop to play back. And then right next to that is the arrangement record button. Right here next to this is the MIDI arrangement overdub. Okay, so if you wanted to record one segment and then you want to record again, but you want to record something on top of it, this is where that happens, and this is the MIDI arrangement overdub. Next to that, this is the automation arm. When enabled, manual parameter changes can be recorded to session clips and the arrangement. Okay, so this is something that in class we definitely spend a lot of time practicing and doing, because the automation is definitely a very important subject, and it's actually super fun to do as well. This is re-enable automation, so this is a kind of a safety feature. If you accidentally click on a parameter that you didn't mean to when it already had automation on it, this will allow you to bypass that, but then also re-enable it just in case you don't accidentally delete all the hard work you put into your automation. Capture MIDI. If I start triggering notes in real time, this is a great way to capture that idea, so I don't have to worry about always hitting record and then capturing an idea. This will literally, think of it almost as Ableton will listen to the last MIDI performance that you put together, and if you wanted to recall that information, you could click on the capture MIDI and that will show up. Really awesome feature in my opinion. The session record button toggles between playback and overdub recording for clips which are currently playing on ARM tracks. All right, and then over here, this is the loop start punch in point. Okay, this will actually be broken down into bars, beats, and 16th notes. Over here we have punch in, and then we have punch out, and then next to that we have the loop switch. So the punch in and the punch in switch and the punch out switch activate this to prevent arrangement recording prior to the punch in point. Okay, so if you ever need to just literally record one segment but you are worried about deleting everything else around it, okay, you can use these two punch in and punch out features to avoid that issue. Okay, and this will also display the loop punch in region length. All right, so moving on over here, we have the draw mode switch. So the draw mode switch is if you actually wanted to start penciling in notes. Okay, so maybe you don't want to record in real time, and if you're like me, I like a mix of both. I like to try to record sometimes MIDI drums in real time, but then I also like to take my time maybe penciling in chord progressions. This is where you would find this handy tool for you. And by the way, the key command for that is B, if any of you were wondering. And then next to that is computer MIDI keyboard. So if I actually wanted to turn my laptop or my desktop computer keyboard into a performance piano keyboard, you can do that with this switch right here. It's really fun, really cool. And if you're curious about that key command, it is M for MIDI. All right, next to that, we have key. Okay, if you turn this on, you'll notice that my screen will, or a lot of aspects to it will turn a different color here. They're highlighted in a yellowish type color. Basically, if I wanted to customize my laptop keyboard or desktop keyboard, I wanted to set up some features here, some quick key commands myself, some customization. This is where that lives. All right. Next to that is the MIDI toggle switch. Now, if I have any external third-party hardware units, this is where that would live. So if I wanted to hook up my complete control keyboard and I wanted to do some further customization, maybe some of you might have the Ableton Push 2. By default, that's already custom mapped to Ableton or exclusively mapped to Ableton, but let's say you wanted to dive a little bit deeper and make your own customizations, that's where that lives. Okay, over here is the CPU load meter, something you should definitely be paying attention to. The more plugins you add in, the more audio tracks you add in, depending on your CPU performance. If you have 8 gigs or 16 gigs, which is recommended by Ableton for RAM on your computer, at the very least, you'll see your CPU spike here. And by the way, you'll probably notice something else funky happen if your CPU meter starts to freak out. Like you might get audio dropouts, which is not a huge deal. But yeah, if this, in my personal experience, the CPU meter, if I see it go past like 90%, that's letting me know that I probably should address that issue. And then over here, this is the hard disk overload indicator. The indicator lights up if Live was not able to load audio from the disk in time. This condition usually results in short dropouts in audio output stream. Yeah, this is rare when this happens to me. When it does happen, it usually just means that if my external hard drive is not connected correctly, yeah, I will hear audio dropouts, and then this D over here will light up and it will let me know, like, hey, heads up, something's not right with your setup, so you might want to address that. Okay, So one of the first things we talk about in Ableton, or what sets Ableton apart from other digital audio workstations. And if you're curious, what is a digital audio workstation? Well, here's a great example. There are all different types of digital audio workstations, but this is where you can actually create music. Okay, you can play back your ideas, you can export projects, and it's one of my favorite DAWs. And basically what separates Ableton from a lot of other DAWs is its unique properties between what's called the session view and the arrangement view. All right, so right now, currently, what you're looking at in this area here is called the session view. All right, and between the session view, there's one other view, and that's called the arrangement view. So in the session view, this is a great place to lay out some audio loop ideas or some MIDI ideas, and almost think of it as like as a sketch pad. It is a place to monitor your levels, but then also a place to sketch out ideas and maybe launch some clips or launch some audio ideas, and before you decide to record it and move it into what's called the arrangement view. So how I get to that arrangement view, okay, there's two ways. The manual way is to come up here, and then if you look right here in the upper right hand side, you'll see this switch where I can toggle between these vertical 3 lines here and these horizontal lines here. Okay, so when I click on these horizontal lines, you're going to see that you can see these tracks up here, right? Audio 1, audio 2, MIDI 3, MIDI 4. But then when I click right here, you'll also see those tracks, but you're looking at it in a little bit of a different view. This is your arrangement view. So when you start to formulate or come up with ideas, if you plan on arranging something, hence why they call arrangement, and then you want to export those ideas, whether you plan on releasing your music commercially or maybe sending it to a friend, you're going to do it from here. Okay, and here's the cool thing is that I have some producer friends that love exclusively working in the session view. And then I have some fellow producer friends that exclusively love just working in the arrangement view, arrangement versus session view. And is one better than the other? That's up for debate. I think they're both great, and I find myself personally using both for different reasons. And I think over time, if you are not sure which one you're going to gravitate more towards, over time, I think you will discover which view you like working in mostly. So this is the manual way to toggle between the arrangement view and the session view. But the first main key command that we go over and discuss in class, and I homework assignment for you to memorize, is the tab key. Okay, you'll be using the tab key a lot. The tab key is literally just toggling between the session view and the arrangement view. All right. By the way, I was joking about the homework assignment, but it's definitely a good key command to get comfortable with, to get used to, because you'll be using it a lot, regardless of which view you like more. But something, if you pay close attention to this, as I toggle between the session view and the arrangement view, a couple of things do not change. Okay, up here, the global control bar does not change, right? Over here, the browser area does not change. Okay, and then down here, the info tab view, and where you can actually drop an instrument or sample, or you could drop an audio effect, okay, or you could drop a clip in. This view does not change as well. Okay, so it's important to note that, because there are going to be times where you're going to want to just be focusing in this area, and there's going to be times where you're going to be wanting to focus in this area, and there's going to be times where you're just going to exclusively be wanting to focus in this area. But these areas do not change. They are static, except that we can actually manually adjust these parameters over here. And in this area over here, this is what we call the browser area. And this is an important area where if I wanted to search a sound, okay, and there's another great key command that we like to teach in class, and that is Command F, because when you hit Command F, okay, on your keyboard, it allows you to search all results. So let's say I want to find a kick drum. Okay, this will not only scan what's inside Ableton, what comes with Ableton, but it also will scan my entire hard drive. So if I click and type in kick, here's all these different available kicks that I have. Okay, yes, and there are a lot because I definitely hoard way too many sounds. And it's probably not the most practical way to search for something, but it is helpful if maybe you're trying to search for something a little bit more unique. Like maybe I'll search for maybe some field recordings, like, I don't know, water sounds or something like that. Maybe it's a way to see like what I actually have for those types of sounds. Or if you want to do a test for yourself and see if you have certain sounds, it's a great way to do that. So yeah, that's the first thing, is that this is the actual field search bar. Okay, now let's keep moving on. And by the way, just because I'm already in a half-hour segment of this course, please do not forget that you can go over to the Garnish YouTube channel, Garnish Music Production YouTube channel, and you can ask me questions as I'm going through this overview in Ableton Live. All right. So right here, this is a great area. This is called the collections area, and the collections area is designed to allow you to tag certain things that you might want to use later on in your productions. And the cool thing is it's very customizable. As you can see here, if you're brand new to Ableton, you just downloaded Ableton, it might not quite look like mine. Okay, so if I click on this edit section here is where I can actually design what I want my collections folders to be called. Now, the main reason why mine look this way is because, like I said, I have way too many sounds, and I think over time it's a blessing and a curse, really. But basically, if you look at my plugins folder, I have way too many plugins. Okay, way too many. And over time, I might find certain plugins that I really love, that I find myself using a lot. They would end up in this exclusive VSTs collection folder. Okay, and if you're wondering, well, how did I rename these? How did I, colorize them? Like, how did I come up with these names? So if you just right click on your mouse, okay, or control click, you can actually rename these collections panels whatever you like them to be. So personally, I have one called my later folder. My later folder is for when I'm working on a song and maybe I'm looking for a certain kick drum or a certain snare hit, and I'm scrolling through some other sounds that aren't snare hits and I think they're really cool, that might not be appropriate for the current project I'm working on. I will end up putting them into my later folder. So I'm like, oh, these are cool sounds, but I don't need these right now. They're going in my later folder. So this is like my temp folder. Maybe I discovered a new VST, but I don't have time to look at it right now, but I don't want to forget about it. I put it in my later folder. All right. And my VSTs, this is currently my favorite third-party VSTs that I find myself using a lot. My favorite effects, okay, third-party effects that I find myself using a lot. UAD, these are just plugins that I use with my Apollo Twin X that came stock with the interface that I use. And then mixing tools, again, these are exclusively for when I'm actually mixing and mastering a song. These are the mixing tools that I turn to and I find myself using the most. All right. Packs, these are some of my favorite packs that I've discovered from actually Ableton, exclusively in Ableton. And I'll show you a moment why I have this dedicated folder for packs, because for any of you who've gotten the full working version of Ableton, the full suite, they give you a lot of packs. And there's a lot of awesome things in here. It can be overwhelming at first, but what I recommend is maybe if you discover a pack that you really like, go ahead and give it a nice little check mark, and you can check this out later. So I'll give a demonstration on that. Let's say if I go to the packs here and I find this pack, like this convolution reverb, I find myself really liking. All I have to do is right click on it, and then I can say, okay, let's add it to my packs right here. Click on it like this. It'll give it a nice little purple check mark, or a little box, a little square, and then go back to my packs, and then you will see that in here in my packs unit, or my packs collections folder. And then down here I have my Macs, some of my favorite free downloaded Macs for live audio effects or instruments or MIDI effects that I found over time that I like, and also from the Macs third-party software company run by Cycling 74. And I'll explain what Max is in a moment. Okay, so collections area is just a great way to tag some of your favorite drum kits, your favorite sounds, your favorite vocals, you name it. Basically, it's just a great way to narrow down your scope of all the infinite possibilities that you have at your disposal, that you have at your fingertips. Okay. All right. So moving on here, categories. Okay, categories. This now, okay, so now we're moving into like what Ableton actually has to offer. And under the category section under sounds, Ableton tries to group these things together into kind of almost vague-ish terms with when it comes to like, hey, maybe you want to just check out some basses and you want to see what Ableton has to offer for basses. So I can click on this drop-down menu, and the cool thing is that I can preview any one of these bass sounds. Okay. Now, one thing that we teach at the Garnish Music Production School, if you were to take a lesson with us, is we go over these extensions, like, because that's something that's actually really important to understand. Again, I'm not going to go over in detail all the extensions right now, but the extensions will let you know whether it's an Ableton device or if it's an Ableton group or if it's just an AIFF or a waveform. There's other extensions as well, but the cool thing is that as I scroll through these, just using my down arrow key, I can preview all of these sounds. Okay, so there's a lot of options here to get you started if you're not sure where you want to start. Like, hey, keep it simple. Maybe start with just a piano, a grand piano sound, or an old school kind of Rhodes key sound, you know. Okay. And then under here, this is another category that Ableton's put together for you to get going, to get started. And there's a bunch of different options for drums. So if you want to check out some of the drum kits that come with Ableton, this is a preview of what's in that drum kit. This is not necessarily a loop where you can just drag this in and think you're going to get this entire loop. No, it's basically a preview to show you, hey, these sounds are actually in this loop, and you can use them individually to create your own rhythmic ideas. And by the way, there are a lot. You see what I mean? Look, I'm still scrolling. This is why I have this collections folder. Now, some of you might be looking at your collection and you might say like, wait a minute, I don't have as many as you do. Okay, what's the deal here? Something to keep in mind is that I've been building my collections over time. So some of these I have in here might have been packs that I've purchased. By default, when you first download the suite, it takes a little while to install all these packs, so you might not see them right away on your system. But also, don't feel bad if you're like, I don't have as many. In fact, to me, this is a problem. I feel like I have way too many. I guess it's a good problem to have, but yeah, over time, your collections will start to get bigger if you want them to be. So yeah, you're not missing out if you feel like I have more than what you're looking at currently, and maybe you have more than me. So I don't know. Anyways, moving on. Instruments. The instruments panel. This is a great area to really dive into the world of MIDI. Okay, and when I talk about MIDI, I'm talking about able to actually in real time use a tactile device, whether you're using a push or if you're using your own piano keyboard and you want to get into sound design, if you want to get into synthesis, if you wanted to load up some custom drum kits, if you wanted to load up some samples and chop them up like you would on a Kai MPC, these are the instruments. This is where this lives. And in the Ableton course, we go over all these different instruments. Okay, and in fact, part 3 of this series that I'm doing with Garnish, a couple of Saturdays from now, I'm actually going to be diving into this a little bit more. But today's just an overview of Ableton. All right. Underneath that, we have audio effects. In Ableton, there are a lot of different audio effects. Now, some of these audio effects are definitely more for modulation to your sound. So if you wanted to, you know, add delay or add reverb or add saturation, if you want to make something sound brighter, or you want to make something sound darker, okay, effects, those types of effects live in here. But there's also different types of effects that don't necessarily affect your sound. And what do I mean by that? For example, there's one called Ableton Tuner, and the tuner is not an effect where it's, again, going to modulate or change your audio loop or your vocal, but it's a way to maybe tune your guitar. So if you wanted to make sure your guitar is tuned, or your ukulele, whatever the case may be, you would turn your attention to the audio effects and grab something like the tuner. So there's different types of effects when it comes to mixing and mastering. There's effects for adding dynamics to your tracks, like adding compressors and things like that. And then there's effects to make things sound different, to give a different result. Those are like the reverbs and delays and saturations and overdrives and things like that. And then there's the utility effects, where you might have something called a spectrum analyzer. So you can actually analyze the frequencies, you can analyze the pitch, you can analyze the amplitude, and then and yeah, so there's all different types of effects in here. And again, that's something that we definitely dive into in the Ableton course at Garnish. Okay, and then next we have MIDI effects. MIDI effects in here, again, these are exclusively, well, these are effects, but they're exclusively for MIDI. So if you're working with MIDI tracks, this is where those would live. Max for Live, this company, this partnership that Ableton has put together with Cycling 74, Max for Live, another great way to explore different types of audio effects, different types of instruments, and different types of MIDI effects. So there's a lot to work with. Down here, this is the plugins folder. This is where you would find your audio units. Okay, this is where you would find your VSTs. If you recall earlier when we were looking in the preferences, I mentioned that if you wanted to scan, or if you want to see your third-party VSTs, whether, let's say, you're downloading something from Soundtoys or Native Instruments or Serum, you know, something like that, Vital, all those things, they all live in here. Okay, clips, this is another form of Ableton to allow you to preview maybe some clips or some loops that you might want to use. The extension ALC, Ableton Live Clips. So some of these might be actual audio loops, some of these might actually be MIDI loops, and some of these could even be potentially MIDI instruments. All right. And then samples, this would actually be all of my samples, whether I downloaded some samples from third-party sources to sample packs my friend might have gave me, or I downloaded from the internet, to what's available in Ableton's full suite, all live right here. Okay. Now the next category, packs. Again, these are the packs that you would download from Ableton. What's really cool is right here it says one available update. This lets me know that I have an available update that I could download right now, and then it will automatically install in Ableton while I'm working on Ableton. So if you're looking at your packs and you guys have downloaded the full suite and you're not seeing all these available packs, you might want to scroll down here, and if it says 0 available packs, then you've probably downloaded all of the available ones that come with the suite. If it says you have 74 available packs, then you can always go to the Ableton website right here where it says get more packs and preview the packs before you decide to download them. Personally, I went ahead because this is what you're paying for. If you buy the full suite, this is a great way to get a bunch of sounds. If you don't have sounds yet, take advantage of that, right? So you could download all of these and you could always delete them later. Earlier I mentioned, something you might want to consider is installing these on a external hard drive. That's what I recommend. That's what Ableton actually recommends. You don't have to do that, but it can save CPU, storage usage, and memory as well. Anyways, so that's where these live. User library. Okay, so if I build any presets, if I build any clips or templates, if I build anything like that, that's where those things will live right here. And the current project, this is where you're going to find, if I actually had a current project going, like if I actually saved this project, that's where this would live. And basically, if you start saving your project, you'll see your backups here, and Ableton allows up to 10 backups before leaves off on the last current one. But yeah, backups here just in case, you know, knock on wood, your session crashes. You can find your backups here. Okay. Now, anything below this that you're going to see here, these are custom folders that I've built. So for example, like if I actually wanted to build a custom folder, and this is something I teach in the Ableton class, or we teach, I should say, because we have other instructors as well. I'm not the only Ableton instructor, if you're wondering, but I can see all my available projects here, all my stems, even projects I've used in Garnish class. I can access these, and I can even preview maybe some of the packs and sounds, okay, here, which is like just a nice little area, or a nice feature that you can actually customize these folders. And by doing that, it's actually really easy to do. Right here where it says add folder, you click on add folder, and then you can redirect, like if you download a pack, say from splice.com or sounds.com, maybe if you download it, basically anyways, if you want to customize these folders, like maybe you have some of your favorite kick drums and you want them, put them in your own folder, this is where you would do it. You would create a folder, and then you redirect it and let Ableton know this is where it lives. So once you do that, like for example, let me just give you a demonstration. My drums, okay, I created these subfolders on the external hard drive where I can preview all the different, say, kick drums that I want to use, to the different snares, things like that, to different 808s or tonal hits. Okay, I even have a dedicated folder for different MIDI packs that I've been wanting to check out and maybe use in my productions. Okay, so let me just, this is a blank canvas, all right, and I just want to show you what it would look like to have a couple of tracks in here. And then I'm going to explain to you the rest of these parameters. We're going to go in a full circle here. So this is pretty much in a nutshell the entire preview area, the browser area. And if you recall, just one last thing I want to mention about this real quick is down here, this preview area is where you can actually listen to the sounds. So as I go through these drums, if you're wondering how I'm cycling through them so fast, I'm just using my down arrow key on my keyboard to preview these sounds. And if you notice right here, there's a tiny little headphone symbol, okay? That's letting you know you can actually listen to these sounds. So if you're trying to scroll through sounds and you're not hearing them, it's because the headphone monitoring tool has not been activated. So make sure that's on, okay? Make sure that's on, and that way you can go through these sounds and preview them, all right? So let me show you what it's like to open up a project, and let me show you what a project can look like, or at least the start of a project. I want to keep this simple and clean for you guys to understand. So I come up to File, and if I go to where it says Open Recent, you can see all my recent projects here, the ones that I've worked on in the past. And then this one right here is one I set up exclusively for today's lesson. If I go to Garnish Intro Session, I can just click on that, okay? And then right now it'll say, do you want to save the changes, the current changes before closing? Because this is not a project, I actually don't have any reason to save this, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and just hit Don't Save. And then now you'll see a new project open up. And now just demonstrating what a project can look like. So what you're looking at up here, okay, this is actually what's called the track, okay? So here's track number 1, track number 2, track number 3, and track number 4, okay? And these two tracks are what's considered audio tracks, right? That have something called clips inside them. And these clips can actually play sound. So if I double click down here, you can actually see the waveform for that sound. And I can click on this clip, okay, which is just an audio loop, by the way. That's all that means. And then on this one, this is exclusively a MIDI clip, or MIDI track with a MIDI clip inside it. So it looks a little bit different, okay? And then the same goes for this one as well. So these are, the top here is what you would call your tracks, and you can reorganize these by just clicking and dragging around. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to not really pay attention to what's happening in my browser area anymore, I can go ahead and collapse it like this if I want. And actually right up here, there's a little drop down toggle arrow. Would you click on that? And it can also make it disappear. So, you know, some things are customizable, some things are not, okay? So, you know, it's really nice that you can just kind of stretch this out. And even this section here, you can kind of stretch out as well. So you can also just click on this, and I can make that disappear. All right. But to be honest, I like to have them both open, so I'm going to leave that open. So as you look at these track title bars, again, these are what's called the clips, and underneath the clips, you will see an area that's pretty important. This area where it says audio from, extension in, monitoring, audio to. So basically, if we wanted to customize some of these settings, meaning if I wanted to record audio into other audio tracks, or if I wanted to hook up a microphone, maybe hook up a guitar, I could actually set the routing set to my sound interface, my audio interface, and do those types of recordings. And underneath here, this is where you'll find the track volume. Okay, so if I wanted to play this clip, let me just demonstrate what that looks like or what that sounds like. If I just go ahead and play this clip, and this is just an audio clip. Okay, I can stop it right here. Okay, and I can also use this fader. Okay, this is the volume fader, the amplitude fader. Fade it in and out. If I wanted to deactivate it, okay, this is what's called the track activator. And I can also solo it. Okay. So let's say I wanted to play this with this this hi-hat loop. I could activate it and then activate this loop. Okay. And so let's say I want to solo this hi-hat. Okay. And then maybe solo this one. Okay. So you can see here that with each track and each clip, I can turn them off individually. And this area here, you can actually add as many clips as your computer can handle. Actually, technically, well, it depends on what version of Ableton you're using, but I can have a lot of audio clips, and I can have a lot. I've never run out of audio clips, and I've never run out of MIDI clips. The limitations, there is a limitation, but you'll be surprised. There's a lot that you can add. And over here, okay, so looking at these tracks in this area, this is what we call these two areas. We have what's called the sends, and then we have what's called the return. So I have a return reverb and a return delay. Next to that is the master, and underneath that we have what's called the scene. Okay, so let's say hypothetically, and again, by the way, if you're wondering, how did I even get these tracks loaded in here? I'm going to be demonstrating this for next Saturday's class, where we look a little bit more exclusively at audio clips. But for now, just understanding the overview here, what the scene is about. If I wanted to launch multiple clips at once, I could do that by launching this thing called the scene, and that's what these numbers represent here. Currently, I have 8 scenes, and you could add more scenes as you keep progressing and adding more clips. So to demonstrate that, if I go ahead and just hit play here, all of these clips will play at once. Okay. So what you're looking at is all of these clips playing at once with their individual track volumes, and then over here is the master volume. All right, so let's say I want to get this to a comfortable level. I will take the track volume for each one of these and maybe turn them down like this, so I'm no longer clipping, going in the red. Okay, and again, if I wanted to solo maybe just one of these, this is an audio effect, or sorry, this is a MIDI effect. These are MIDI drums. This is a hi-hat loop. This is a karimba loop. Okay. And the cool thing is, if I wanted to maybe change the tempo up here in the master, where it says 93 beats per minute, I can click and drag it up, and click and drag it down. And if I want to stop all these clips at once, I come down to the session view, or sorry, the scene view over here in the session view in the right hand side, and hit stop. Okay. So other things I want to point out to you is in this area here, what we have is called the info tab. I recommend that you have the info tab on, especially if you're just learning about Ableton, or maybe you've been using Ableton for a while and you want the actual definitions to these things. Almost think of it as like a kind of a hybrid version of the Ableton manual that will allow you to quickly understand what something is something called, what does it mean. And right here, for example, this says send. So if I wanted to click and drag up and down to adjust the track's contribution to the corresponding return track's input, I can do that. So if I hit play on this, I can add maybe a little bit of reverb, which is currently going to the A send, or sorry, the A return track. You can also think of this as a bus. Some of you who might be familiar with what a bus is, okay, Ableton likes to call these sends and returns. So send the signal into the return track, which has a reverb on it, and that reverb outputting to the master, okay? But something I want to point out is between the track, okay, and the clip, if I double click on the clip, you'll see that this new window pops up. And I can expand this, okay? This is where we can edit the clip, we can expand it, we can look at the actual inside of getting under the hood of the actual clip itself, okay? And this is where we can do things like transpose. So if I wanted to play the track and maybe, okay, do other things like adjust the warping capabilities and things like that. All of that information's here. If I wanted to maybe loop a segment, okay, things like that. And then over here, if I look at this one, it will automatically if I double click on this clip, it will bring me to this next clip. And if I click on this one, it will bring me to the MIDI instrument and the MIDI information. So you can see there's a big difference between what MIDI looks like and what audio looks like. Okay, so MIDI clips, play, as you hear both. All right, and something else I want to point out is that when you're looking at something like, say, this karimba loop, okay, you can also toggle between these two views, and this is what's called the clip waveform. That's what you're looking at here. And then right here, this is where you can actually add a device. So when they say add a device, what does that mean? Well, maybe, just maybe, I want to add a little bit of an effect. Maybe I want to not use a return track. Maybe I want to use something like a low pass filter, okay? I can add a low pass filter to my karimba. Make it a little darker. Okay, and I can toggle back to the waveform. And that goes for both the MIDI instruments. So if I want to actually look at the device, I can click down here and I can see the device. This is the actual instrument itself, the drum rack instrument itself. And, or sorry, technically this is an instrument rack, but yeah, there's a drum rack inside that as well. So that's the basic understandings or the basic principles of this of the layout, the overview of Ableton. Now I know that you're probably wondering, like, wait a minute, I have a ton of questions, or maybe there's some things that I kind of skipped over. And again, that's because I only have an hour to really dive into this and to go over the basics of Ableton. But I hope this is enough to get you understanding the basics. And like I said, I will be back here next week at this time. And if you're wondering what time I'll be back on the air, on the next at least 2 Saturdays I'll be on the air, and we'll be rotating these videos in and out. 11 a.m. that's specific West Coast time here in the United States. Depending on where you are in the world, you want to check your listing times for that. But 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. PT time. And so again, you know, if you have any questions, you can always ask them on our page, on our YouTube page, and we'll answer them the best we can. And the point of this, once again, is just to give you an overview of what it's like to take a class here at Garnish. Now, if this were an actual class, like an actual class that we host on our online channel, it's definitely more interactive. It's not just asking questions. I try to make sure it's as hands-on as possible. Meaning, like, if you need feedback on tracks, I'll give demonstrations, and then even sometimes help out with your projects by taking over your cursor and assisting you in those things. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this. One last thing I just wanted to turn your attention to: if you are interested in signing up or checking out more about Garnish Online and our school, you can head over to our website. Okay, that's not our website. Sorry, that's the YouTube page. Let me click on that. There we go. Here's our website. So it's edu.garnishmusicproduction.com, and you can check out all of our different satellite schools that you can see here. We're all around the world, okay? And then if you click here where it says live online courses, currently, as I'm recording this video, they are currently 33% off, which I think is really cool. A who's who of talent of music producers and songwriters from all around the world, sharing their knowledge, skills, and wisdom and experience with not just Ableton, but all different types of courses, from software, platform, DAWs, building this series called Build Beats Better, writing and recording, synthesis, sound design, techniques, workflow, mixing and mastering, and a whole lot more. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. And I'll be back here next week, same time, same place, and we'll be taking a closer look at audio and audio effects. All right, until next time, guys, everybody, take care.